My name is Joe Peroni, and this is the Rise Above Project. And today I want to talk about last week's Super Bowl halftime show. Now, I know I'm a little bit late doing this, and I've been thinking about doing this the whole week. And I finally decided that I have some things to say, and I do want to say them. I think the Super Bowl is actually a very important part in America. It speaks a lot to our culture, and I think it speaks a lot to how people react towards the game itself and towards the halftime show. And if you follow all 57 Super Bowls, you will see there's a definite trend, and we could see the way America is going. So I really want to take an honest look at this. And I'm saying that up front because I think some of this is going to trigger some people, but I think it needs to be said. So you could call this a boomer reaction to this halftime show. Although technically I'm not a boomer, but young people like to make fun of older people by saying, okay, boomer, although I'm Generation X. So let's start with that. Now, I do not want to make any comments about Rihanna and her singing or her the type of music because it's subjective. So we can't have a conversation about that because some people, they love that kind of music, and some people like classical music, and some people like country. So statements like that, they don't make any sense. I don't think it helps anybody. However, I do think that there are a lot of things to talk about because when I would go through the comments section, let's say on YouTube or wherever, where there's millions of views on this halftime show, it seems like the overriding thought is if you have something negative to say about Rihanna, that you're a racist. And one of the things that bothers me about this, besides everything, is that I am extremely liberal. I have never voted Republican in my life, but I have a lot of friends who are Republicans. And I understand why a lot of these people are getting aggravated with being called racist every 5 seconds when somebody disagrees with them. It makes no sense. So, number one, if you don't like Rihanna's music, it doesn't make you a racist. So I think that's an important comment to make. Also, if you don't like Rihanna's music, it doesn't mean that you're old and that you should be put out to pasture somehow. So I'm going to talk about that. I'm also going to talk about ageism as we go on in this show. So what is fair to comment on? So let's comment. I've got a lot of comments. So let's start with this. Number one, on her records, she uses auto-tune. As a person who really enjoys music and I love to see talented people do their thing, I can't stand it when they use auto-tune because they're using other ways and they're not actually using their voice. Now, I get that some people love it. Cool, good for you. Do it. But I like my singers to be natural and to be real. She's not. So then let's go towards her, during her concerts, what does she do? She uses a lot of auto-tune there as well. Again, I'm not used to that, and just because I like a lot of people who don't use auto-tune, and again, I'm Italian, so I can go back and listen to Pavarotti and Caruso and everybody you want. They're not using auto-tune, and they never did. They didn't have it, but then again, they were so talented, they never needed it. So I'm very suspect with people getting paid millions, or in Rihanna's case, $1.5 billion she's worth, when she's not really singing. That irks me. So let's continue. The halftime show itself. Again, not a critique on the songs. I don't care about that. But she lip-synced the whole halftime show. Now, I know in just about every city in America, on Friday and Saturday nights, you can go to a bar and you can see people doing karaoke. And what that is, of course, if you don't know, actually we all know, they play music in the background and somebody will give it their best shot. They'll try to sing. And sometimes people are good, sometimes they're not, but they try their best. But at least they're singing. In this situation, although the NFL doesn't pay the artist directly, although Michael Jackson did get paid, I think in 1993, but these artists get paid millions of dollars because they're going to see record sales or recording sales and their concert sales go up. And so being bestowed this is an honor that gives them millions upon millions of dollars. And she didn't even do karaoke. She didn't even open up her mouth to sing, which I think I can say something about that. What else can I say something about? There were no special guests. So I don't know if she is responsible for that. However, if you can't do a full show and you know you're diminished or you just don't have the energy because she was pregnant, nothing wrong with being pregnant, but why don't you invite other people on there to spread the wealth? She didn't do that. Most artists do, she did not. So again, we can talk about that. And as a person who loves music, there were no musicians on stage. None. I think that's weird. Like, it's literally, you just hear a sound, and then somebody with a microphone, they pull it to the side, there's still sound going on. And then you get a whole bunch of people jumping up and down wearing like hazmat uniforms, whatever they were wearing. I don't know. But there was no musicianship there. You know, as I speak, you're seeing Peter Townsend with a guitar, Jimi Hendrix guitar. There are musicians in the world, but we didn't see that for a halftime show for someone who gets paid millions of dollars. Now, let's take a look at what she actually did on stage first. Now, one of the reasons why they have these types of shows is it's popular, and there's this whole thing about women's empowerment. Yes, go women, you go girl. Okay, I know what the word empowerment means, and I do know how it means, you know, in terms of women. I understand it. I don't know if a lot of women understand it, because there's a lot of people watching this Super Bowl who are not your usual football fans. A lot of them are young kids, because this is going into almost every household in America, and we have a lot of kids watching. Therefore, you'll see a lot of Super Bowl shows where they do a lot of Disney type stuff and things like this, because they're trying to grab the attention of children, and hopefully they can be fans as they get older. And a lot of the things why they don't play classic rock music anymore is because they want to bring in a younger audience. I can understand that. Okay, so you're afraid of the Rolling Stones now, you're afraid of The Who, you're afraid of Bruce Springsteen, you're afraid of Paul McCartney. Okay, because there's a certain element to that. They definitely don't want to put on a heavy metal show, although Metallica sells more records than anybody these days, and they sell out every show, but we're afraid to put Metallica on a stage because of their element that might be negative. Okay, so let's talk about the very, very safe Rihanna show. Now, I had to go through some 13 real torturous minutes of listening to her halftime show so I can get some still shots for you, because I don't think I'm allowed to play the video for you. I think that's illegal on YouTube land. So let me just show you this. So on this part of the video, she decides that it's a really good thing for children and women's empowerment to start, and I'm going to use the most simplest non-profane words I can, just so you understand. I'm not going to go cursing every 5 seconds, but in this part of the video, she takes a fair amount of time to give herself a rectal exam. So she's rubbing her fingers up her rectum, and if you don't believe me, there's a nice shot of that. How beautiful for all our young fans watching Super Bowl. I'm sure a lot of men with their daughters trying to talk about women's empowerment, they're probably sick about that. But it gets better because, listen, you can't just do anal on TV. We're going to have to rub the vagina a little bit, which is very important for a Super Bowl show. And of course, that's really nice. And I always like that little thing with the face. Oh, you have to act like you're enjoying it in front of 100 million people masturbating. That's awesome. Now, rubbing your vagina in front of 100 million people is not complete unless you take your fingers, and I'm not sure what she's doing. She's either trying to taste herself or smell herself. I don't know. But I guess if you're going to be rubbing your vagina, it's very important to know how it smells or tastes. And you need to do this in front of 100 million people. And there you go. She's licking or smelling her fingers. I can't tell. I don't care. Certainly, every musician in the world that's dead now is rolling over in their graves, and every musician that's killing themselves right now trying to learn chords and scales and all these things and trying to get great music is just they're beside themselves, wondering, oh, I missed it. I forgot the whole masturbation phase I should do. Now, in this, I couldn't get all the people, but I think at this particular one, there was about 15 people trying to hump her at the same time, which is very important for women's empowerment. You got to let women know that, yeah, you are in charge and all the men around you want to hump you. So there's a little bit of that. So I get, whoops, I missed that. You need to get a closer look. Nothing better than a bunch of guys sticking their penises up in the air at some girl for $100 million there, 100 million people. Let's continue. She's 5 months pregnant, no problem. She got a little tired, she needed to sit down. I understand that. But here's the thing. I'm also a personal trainer, and I have been for over 30 years. I've trained many women over the years who are pregnant, and I train them all the way through their pregnancy. And you know what? Their workouts are about an hour, hour and a half long. Rihanna's workout here was 13 minutes. And everybody's going home. And she was only 5 months pregnant, by the way. I've trained people up to the last day they gave birth. So this whole thing that we have to worship her because, you know, that she's pregnant, I think we all have a massive respect for human life and children to be. And that's true. But should we, you know, like, it's not even worthy to say she's amazing or she's a queen because she's 5 months pregnant and she shows up that way without anybody knowing, by the way, and she was of diminished capacity. So she had to sit down because she got tired, but, you know, she just can't leave that vagina alone because she sits down, was bored, had nothing better to do, and she had to start rubbing herself again, which is very important. I mean, you got to teach these young girls how to masturbate in public. And, you know, just to finish it off, right? Like, we got to show people that she's flexible and that she also likes anal sex, so she has to bend over so we get a clear shot of her vagina and rectum as well. Where is she singing here? Interesting, right? And I will look at one more picture. Here's a great picture of her really belting it out and hitting a high note on a record, but not live. And as you can see, the microphone is nowhere near her when she's hitting that note. Again, no care whatsoever about at least even looking like she's trying to do a good show for people, because she's not even doing a good job of lip syncing. It's terrible, terrible. All right, that's embarrassing. And if you didn't like any of that I said, listen, you can understand. I can understand you're not liking it, but then carry it over and see what women's empowerment really is. And if you're a woman and you go, oh my God, I don't want to be objectified, then do something about that. Because I can show you many musicians that deserve to be in that position to make millions of dollars and have millions of people watching them, and not that. So let's continue. To be clear, the halftime show is not a concert for Rihanna's fans. Okay, it's not. And now I get it. I love a lot of musicians that are pushing 80 years old. If they have a bad night or something like that, that's okay. Like, I'm willing to be okay with that because I grew up with their music and I'll pay the money and I'm good. I don't care about that. I saw Don Ho a long time ago, and he was in obvious distress because he had a heart attack earlier, and I was still honored to be in his presence, and we had a great maybe 30-minute conversation after his show, and I enjoyed it. It was one of, you know, it was a great day in my life to meet him and to see his show, and that's okay. He was sick, I get it, but when you're Rihanna and you're fine and you show up and surprise everybody, oh my God, you're 5 months pregnant, it's not right. It's not a right thing to do, especially if you're of diminished capacity. Again, her fans would be okay with it, but the people who are watching the Super Bowl, not okay with it. The people who are going to the event, not okay with it. They should be expecting a big show. And by the way, I went to the 1995 Super Bowl, and at some point I was able to get a signed helmet from Steve Young, who was the MVP of that game. So here's my contribution, and this is one of the reasons why I care so much about this. I spent a lot of money for that game. I expect to see some good stuff. And I did. Our halftime show that I saw in 1995 was Patti LaBelle. Again, I liked her. I thought she was great. Has nothing to do with race, right? Also has nothing to do with age, because the other person that was the main person back then was Tony Bennett. Now, back then, you could just put people out there. Patti LaBelle was not the most famous singer in the world at that time, and neither was Tony Bennett. But they were great over a long period of time throughout their lives, and they deserved to be there. It was more like a lifetime achievement. And when I do another show about the Super Bowl, you'll see how that is. Now, what's happening these days? I don't get it. We're being forced to listen to Rihanna, Beyonce, Jennifer Lopez, Shakira, Madonna. These people have nothing to do with women's empowerment. They all are going up there, shaking their hips, stripping, and doing all these other profane things. And it makes no sense to me. What is the average ticket price for this game? The average ticket price is about $9,000, and the really, really good seats are between $30,000 to $40,000. So these people are wanting to see a real show. And what they're seeing is a diminished person who shows up. So what does this really mean about, say, Rihanna herself? I think it's symptomatic of her entitlement, her narcissism, her self-glorification, and not caring at all what the average football fan actually wants. She's going up there for her own fans and followers and trying to make money off of everybody else's back. So a couple of things about her pregnancy, and I kind of alluded to it already. It did affect her performance. There's no way that, let's say, a man could go up there and say, oh man, I got into a car accident, 5 months ago. I can't walk and I can't really sing right now, but you offered me the job and I'm going to hide this from you, but I'm going to go up on stage anyway to take your millions. Listen, that person would be destroyed and panned and never allowed back, right? But in this case, we're okay with it. And like I said before, 5 months into her pregnancy and she can lip sync. That's great. I see women on a constant basis throughout my life who I've trained through their pregnancies. And by the way, they're not millionaires. They're not billionaires. And by the way, there's plenty of women every day that are working through their pregnancies and have minimum wage jobs, or they're middle-class people that are doing their best. They don't get praised for being a queen because they show up pregnant, basically unannounced, and act like it's a good thing. I don't understand any of this. Again, it's a lack of credibility. Continuing with this, we all care about the sanctity of life and pregnancy, okay? But does she? Because if you're a guy and you know that the woman you're with is pregnant, why is it okay for her to stand 150 feet off the ground on a platform with no guardrail? Like, if that was a guy, think about it. If it was some guy who was hanging his kid off a balcony, wouldn't we say he's a horrible human being and he's a bad person? But when we see her doing something that's relatively pretty dangerous, we all say, oh my God, she's fine, it's great, it's awesome. No, it's not. Actually, I think Michael Jackson did that. He did hang his kid over a balcony and he got destroyed for it, and he should have. In this case, she's a woman, so we can't say anything negative. But, put me on the side of to say that putting an unborn child in danger like that's a bad thing. That's not empowerment. That's stupid. Okay, let's continue. Let's talk about some stats about the types of people that go to these games. Now, the people most likely to watch the Super Bowl by gender is 58% male and 37% female. So again, who are her fans? Mostly female. So why is she there? I don't care if her music's good. She doesn't really have any male fans. So why is she there? It's a good question. Who's most likely to watch the Super Bowl in terms of age? Most of the people that watch the Super Bowl are over 35 years old. And the biggest percentage of people who watch the Super Bowl, about 50% or more than 50%, are between the ages of 45 and 64. So what does that tell you? It tells you that we should be able to get some people that we really care about to do the halftime show, especially in that age group. And you don't have to say, oh, okay, boomer, you're too old. No, the people that are going to these games and who can afford $9,000 up to $40,000 are the people who you should be catering to because they pay the bills. Super Bowl attendees. And again, I told you I went to one way back when the 49ers were in it. Again, who's the people that are attending these games? They're between 45 and 65 years old on average. It's the biggest percentage of people. So don't you think that you should probably try to entertain them at least a little bit? I think so. That would make sense, right? You can't go, okay, boomer. You're not allowed to say that. Until you make enough money to pay that $30,000 to go to that game, I don't want to hear it. You're ruining the game for so many people. The NFL is doing an amazing job of trying to be inclusive and trying to bring in other types of people or younger people into the game. And that's a good thing. But you should be grateful. And it's not about that you need to take over the whole thing. Now, every year we got to see untalented people who are lip syncing. The last time a real band showed up at the Super Bowl was in 2010. When The Who did their show, and they don't lip sync. And the bands before them didn't lip sync either. So let me drill down on this point a little bit more, just in case you're saying, oh, this guy's too old, he doesn't know what he's talking about, we need to somehow put in these other ones. And I understand, people like Rihanna have been around for a while, I get it, but still not classic or legendary at this point. She hasn't been around long enough, I think, to get that status. So here's something that's really interesting. Let's look at popular songs and bands that get played during NFL games all year. And this is where the hypocrisy is. Because people like me will go to a game and we hear all these songs and all these bands and we love it. And then when it gets to the Super Bowl, and then when you want to pay top-notch money, then you get garbage up there. I don't understand that. So let's go over this. So popular songs are bands that are played at NFL games. Number one, Queen, with songs like Another One Bites the Dust, We Will Rock You, We Are the Champions. Is Queen still a working band? Can they play the Super Bowl? The answer is yes. Continuing, AC/DC, they played TNT, they played Thunderstruck, among others. Is AC/DC still a working band? Yes. Get them to do a halftime show. Number three, Twisted Sister. They play We're Not Gonna Take It, and they play other Twisted Sister songs. Are they still a band? Not really. But Dee Snider is still in great health, and he's from Baldwin, like I am. And if you asked him to play the Super Bowl, guaranteed he would. Get him. Number four, Metallica. The biggest band in the world right now. And they play heavy metal. They've been around since like 1981. They play Enter Sandman every game. But yet when it comes to the Super Bowl, nobody wants to put them on there. Makes no sense. Get Metallica to do a halftime show. They will not lip sync. Guns N' Roses, Welcome to the Jungle. Guns N' Roses does not sound as good as they used to, but they can pull it off for one song. Get them as a special guest. Number six, Van Halen. They play Jump all the time. Unfortunately, Eddie Van Halen is not with us, so we can't have them. But you know what? They've been around since 1977. You should have had them before that. Makes no sense. And they wouldn't lip sync. Number seven, the White Stripes with Jack White. An amazingly talented guy. They play Seven Nation Army in every coliseum, all around the country, all the time, every game. But yet when it comes to halftime show, do they play him? No. Do they ask him to show up at the Super Bowl? No. By the way, he doesn't lip sync either because he's a real talented musician. Continuing, Start Me Up by the Rolling Stones. The Rolling Stones have played the Super Bowl, and they did not lip sync, and they were great. Number nine, Ozzy. They play Crazy Train every game. Now, Ozzy, he announced his retirement just recently, and part of it is because he has Parkinson's, and so he can't do it. But you know what? All these other people like Rihanna, Beyonce, Jennifer Lopez, Shakira, blah, 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 they're all lip syncing. So I guarantee you, you could stand Ozzy Osbourne in front of a microphone and have him lip sync, and all of his fans, all the way going back to like 1970, are gonna cheer and love it. And you know what? Ozzy's fans, a lot of them have money. They will be there. The average heavy metal fan that's over 50 years old makes between $75,000 to over $100,000. They have money for tickets. They're the ones paying the bills. Bring Ozzy back to lip sync. We'll understand. He's given a lot, and he's sick right now. We're okay with that. Let's continue. They play the final countdown by Europe all the time. You know what? Europe is still a working band. Bring them on. They got one good song. Let them do it. It's fine. Let's continue with this. You might be saying, okay, yeah, so this Generation X guy, he doesn't know what he's talking about because he's not in with the in right now. These people are not making money in the year 2022. Yeah, you can't say that because these things, you can look them up. So let's look at the top, within the top 10 biggest money makers in the year 2022. Number 1, Bruce Springsteen. We're back to that pesky classic rock again. Bruce Springsteen did play at the Super Bowl though, but heck, bring him back. Continuing, Bob Dylan. His first song came out like in 1962, and yet he's still in the top 10 moneymakers. Paul Simon, Neil Young, Lindsey Buckingham from Fleetwood Mac, and the Red Hot Chili Peppers. All in the top 10 for the moneymakers of 2022. And you might say, yeah, but that's because they sold their catalogs. And I'll say, yeah, you're making my point. Because the reason why they're able to sell their catalogs for so many millions of dollars is because a lot of companies still know that they want to use those songs in the future. So those songs are going to be used for the next 50 to 75 years. You tell me we're going to be listening to Rude Boy or some other song by Shakira 50 years from now. We're not. Get these people back on the Super Bowl. We need to see some real music. Continuing. So you might say, but they're not touring right now, so therefore you can't bring them to the Super Bowl. Okay, so let's look at the biggest money-making tours of the year 2022. You know who's number 1 on the list? Genesis. Genesis. Okay, Phil Collins is too sick to tour. Peter Gabriel is not in Genesis anymore. And yet they're still the number 1 live band in the world. That tells you people love Genesis. And if you don't know who they are, listen, that's your fault. Because again, they've been around for 50 years. Should they play the Super Bowl? I don't know if they'd be a good band for that. I don't know if they'd want to, but yeah, why not? Let's continue. Elton John. Anybody have a problem with that? With him playing the Super Bowl? How about Billy Joel? Do we have a problem with him playing the Super Bowl? Let's continue. John Mayer, Coldplay, and on the list of top 10 money tours of 2022 would be Eric Church. Now, Eric Church is country, and who cares? Listen, country is very popular too, but Eric Church is interesting because not only is he hugely popular for his live shows, and he's in his prime, he also bridges that gap between country and rock or southern rock, which in that case, Leonard Skinner is still a working band. Bring them back. Because none of these people are hack musicians and act like they're doing something. None of them use auto-tune and none of them lip sync. And the people who are paying the big money for these shows need to see real music the way they want it. Because the people who are just loving to go see Shakira sing or somebody masturbating the whole time while they're lip syncing, the people who want to see that, they're not the real football fans. So I'm tired of this already. So again, I'm trying to keep the show under 30 minutes. I made it by about 30 seconds. So hopefully the show is okay for you, not too triggering. You can disagree or have another opinion, except the fact that I'm using a lot of facts, so you can't disagree with that. Sorry. The other show I want to do about the Super Bowl, because I just love the Super Bowl and the way it's a mirror of our culture. So I think it's very important, especially too, even as a marriage and family therapist, I think there's a lot to learn by looking at that. And I'd like to take a look at the 57 other Super Bowls there were and try to, track through that and see who those artists were. And to see if they were being inclusive, because I believe the NFL's been inclusive since day one, and I can prove that by their Super Bowl halftime shows. And they also had no problem with age, because they would invite older people all the time. It's only been recently where they don't want to put in older people anymore because they're trying to satisfy this other crowd who, quite frankly, is not the real football fans in the first place. So hopefully this was valuable to you, and it was a good 30 minutes spent of your life. If you thought the show was okay, please subscribe and tell a friend. Thank you.